to this Friday to bring the Digikat to you once again. We'll wait for the others to join us. And until then, let's see, perhaps we can recap what had happened last time. So Komal, any ideas? Anyway, I should introduce them first before just jumping on them. Very quickly, we had a Digikat webinar a week ago, 2 weeks ago, to talk about the collaboration of digital creative coding with IKAT. IKAT is a technique of fabric production, patterning technique. And we had designers and coders come together to, so we'll just wait a little bit more. I don't want the others to miss out. We'll wait for a while. And in the meantime, I'll like to welcome all of you. Nanditi, you let me know when we begin, okay?
Sure.
We'll just wait for a little while more. So in the meantime, hello to all. Look forward to a very interesting presentation. We'll just wait for 2 more minutes. Oh, it's lovely to see people from all over. All people who are interested in coding as well as textiles, I guess. Lovely to see you. We have friends from Abu Dhabi, Hyderabad, Vadodara, Odisha, Netherlands. That's our very own Hugo. Okay. Ocean. Milan. Hello, good to know that. Oh, great, Devika. Nice to have you here too. Oh, Bihar, Yatharth, welcome. Palak, hello from New Delhi. Ambika as well from Udaipur. I think we are covering the whole country and many parts of Europe, I see, and the other parts of the world as well. And my dear friend Indrani from Delhi. We have a lot of support. Nanditi, let me know when it's time to start, okay?
Yeah. I guess looks good now. We have a few people on YouTube as well as here.
All right.
Let's go ahead.
All right. So, hello once again, and welcome to Digikat Week 2, where we are going to be talking on textile innovations. We have some very, very interesting panel members. But to begin with, let me give you a background to what Digikat is. Digikat was set up as an encounter between coding, creative coding, and the traditional crafts of IKAT. The idea was to bring these two together on a platform and see what could be learned from each other and what could be done together. It's actually, as stated by in the statement, it's a convivial foray into the heritage of IKA through the lens of creative coding. It was meant to be a group of coders and designers coming together, designers who are textile designers, to work together to for a few weeks and to explore what is the possibilities where these two could um, uh, figure out how we could bring them together on and to come out with certain outcomes. You will be hearing about the processes undertaken by groups of designers. Very interesting, and perhaps many of them are very experimental at this stage. The aim of the program was to bring to sensitize the youngsters who probably were familiar with one of the kinds. Perhaps they were more familiar with coding, to help them understand the intricacies and the tedious work that takes place in a craft like ikat, as well as to probably experiment and figure out what could be done to apply coding on ikat or adopt the techniques of ikat to see how coding could relate to it. So it was a 3 weeks encounter. It was planned for 3 weeks. However, I do think it took a little while to bring in the right speakers on board because we wanted to share all our interest with a larger audience. And hence, in the first week, we brought in IKAT, the experts who talked a lot about the technique of IKAT, the kinds and forms, shapes, and colors and identities of ikat presented and done in many parts of the country, like Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, as well as in other countries such as Indonesia or Central Asia. Now, beyond that, we had a speaker from Rich Design called Gunjan. I hope she's here today. We also had invited Beena Rao to talk on what were the issues and challenges faced by IKAT. There have been many efforts by designers, perhaps even the government, to work on these areas and support the dying craft. It's dying because the expertise and the skills in IKAT, though existing, have not really been valued, perhaps. They have not been getting the returns as they should. I'm talking about the weavers. As a result, we have not really seen the craft developing very much or the benefits of the market reaching to the craftspeople. So there have been efforts by perhaps very small groups of individuals who have been working with the craftsmen, training them uh, in design, in business understanding, in reaching out to the market. So these efforts have been useful up to a certain extent, but I think a lot more needs to be done. So this project, Digikat, is an effort to reach out um, to people who probably would not have come in contact with such kind of a craft or would not have found value in the crafts because it hasn't been in their vicinity. So we hope this is going to sort of give you something to think about in future. Okay, what's the next slide? Oh, sorry, 1 minute. The week one, as we said, was the IKAT primer, basics of IKAT, understanding the craft and the practice and the techniques. This week, that's the week two, we are talking of textile innovations. I've invited some practitioners of crafts who come from varied places in terms of their practice of or dealing with IKAT. So I'll be introducing them to you soon, but we have some very interesting insight into the kind of work that they've done. And week 3, which we will be announcing soon, we will be presenting the projects that are right now in works, and perhaps a lot more developments would have taken place by then. And it will be interesting to know what you think about it. Today we'll be presenting that as well, a little later. So if you have any suggestions or any ideas, that would really be welcome. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so our first speaker is Manisha Chawda. She works in modernizing Sambalpuri IKAT. Sambalpuri is in Orissa, and its techniques, forms, its identities are slightly different from that of Andhra IKAT. She will be giving a background to that. Let me just formally say that she is the founder of Neeli Titli. Neeli Titli, the blue butterfly. What a wonderful name. It's a craft brand that works with IKAT weavers of Western Orissa. So let me say hello, Manisha. Please come and let's share your work, and I'd love to know what all you've been doing.
Thank you, Lynn. Let me share screen.
Oh, then very quickly, let me also, sorry, can I? Okay, the other members are, okay, that's fine. The other members are Alex McLean. He'll be, so I will introduce him before he's to speak. And a third member is Komal Jain, who is a member of Digikat. She will be presenting the projects to you. So Manisha, please go ahead.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So hello, everybody. I'm Manisha. And I have a brand called Neeli Titli, as Nian already mentioned. We work with the Sambalpuri Ikat weavers. So Sambalpur is the western part of Orissa, and it has a very specific kind of ikat. So I'm going to talk more about how we work with that cluster and develop innovative ikat textiles. Okay, so I'm going to go briefly about what is ikat, because last time Gunjan and Beena has already explained it really well, but I'll just go through it very quickly. So okay, so ikat is a yarn resist dyeing technique where the yarns are first grouped and then tied according to a specific pattern, and then dyed. When the ties are opened up, what you see is resist areas which give out the pattern in the fabrics when woven. So I'm having issues moving the slide. Okay. Okay, the second slide is you see the journey from a thread to the fabric. So here you see how the yarns look when they're tied and dyed. This is before going to the loom. This is on the loom. And this is how the fabric looks when it is woven. It's moving very slow for some reason. Okay. Ikat belts of India. So we have, within India, we have 3 major clusters. Gujarat. Gujarat is known for the Patola Ikat they have. We have Pochampalli in Andhra Pradesh. So Gujarat is all double Ikat. Well, some parts are single ikat as well, but yeah, mostly double ikat. Andhra has both single and double ikat, but it's predominantly warp ikat and double ikat, Telia. And then we have Orissa. Orissa again have two clusters, the Nuapatna region and the Sambalpuri region. Textiles made in both the clusters are totally different. The characteristics are very, very different. Nuapatna region is more of silk, Sambalpuri is the cotton belt. So we work with the Sambalpuri region. So here's how the Sambalpuri sari looks like. The region is known for saris. Okay, so my IKAT journey. My IKAT journey started when I was a student at NID. My final project was at NID at the Sambalpuri cluster. The project was sponsored by UNIDO and I was there for 6 months. So it gave me an insight about the craft and in-depth knowledge about the craft because I did a lot of research. I was supposed to come up with a range of products and the market and everything. So and then I worked in the industry for a while and reconnected with the weavers again to start my own brand, Neeli Titli. My takeaways from the project was Sambalpuri textiles were expensive as compared to especially Andhra ikats, possibly because they are finer. So it's difficult to explain to the customer that why Sambalpuris are more expensive than Andhra ikat. So limited design intervention as compared to Andhra, again, very few designers are working in the Sambalpuri cluster. Local consumption overshadows the out of state consumption, which is a good thing. It's really a good thing for the weavers, but the downside is the weavers are, since their production is mostly getting consumed in the local market, they're not willing to go outside and they're not willing to explore the market outside. But yeah, things are changing. Printed replicas of Sambalpuri products flooded in the market, which is a problem we have talked about earlier as well. And the fine Sambalpuri patterns are easier to replicate. So that is a problem. Now, our solutions. So we make very small ticket items, which
Hey,
so very small. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, your mic was going off in between, so I just wanted to let you know. We missed a brief.
Oh, shall I go again?
Yeah, just the last sentence, we missed it.
Okay. So yeah, we do small ticket items like scarves, stoles, hair scarves, ponchos. So that helps getting the craft introduced to the young crowd, and it's easier for them to accommodate these things in their wardrobe as compared to larger items like saris, which you can only wear for special occasions. So when we do our products, we also consider the multi-purpose aspect of the product. So when we are selling a scarf, we teach our customers how they can drape a scarf in different ways. A scarf can be worn as a hair scarf. It can be worn in different ways to make it look really different. A poncho can also be worn as a scarf because when you're folding it, the neckline is hidden. So a poncho can be used as a poncho as well as it can be used as a scarf. So it all adds up to the usability of the product. We also do scarf draping workshops where we teach the customers or interested people how to tie a scarf in more than 20 ways. Another solution is to introduce IKAT products as gifts. So entering the gift market, it opens up a new market for the crafts, as well as it gives an opportunity to the buyer to introduce the beautiful crafts of our country to their loved ones. To raise awareness about the craft, just to make sure that people don't confuse between printed IKATs and the real IKATs, we also do craft talks once in a while, especially in the stores that where we sell. So this is one of the pictures from our talk at Timbri, Bangalore. In the IKAT products, because IKAT is a woven technique. The patterns that you it's printed on the fabric itself. The pattern is in the yarn. So until and unless we extra weft figurines, a lot of texture into it, it's not going to show up as a woven technique, and it's going to be very easy to copy in prints. Our design approach. So I have 3 design approaches to myself. No offense to designer, it's just how I look my work. So I call it the play safe approach. This is the Saro Bandho of Sambalpuri sari. It's like a dictionary that I go back to again and again. It has so many motifs in it. So not only this, a lot of other but this covers mostly all the traditional motifs, and I keep going back to that, pick up motifs from here and design my own products. So it's like in this dupatta I have used the hiran motif from here. This one has the floral pattern, which is called lata in the colloquial language. This one also has lata. This has the butterfly. This has the fish, which I have converted into an all over pattern. So you can really play around a lot with it. It's fun, but I call it the play safe approach. The second approach is, so another collection where it's called water. Um, okay. My second approach is one leg out of the box approach. So now that I know the craft and I have worked with the weavers for a long time, I see the technique and all of that. So I can create my own motifs. So this is a non-traditional motif. The collection is called Tash. And we have all the Tash collections with clubs, hearts, diamonds, spade.
Manisha, I'm going to just stop you for a poll question by the audience, and then we will go back to your slide immediately after this.
Okay.
How can we sensitize people about the value of ikat or other crafts? You can do it through create awareness, of workshops on awareness, hands-on experience at site, visual and sensorial digital experiences, or all of the above. So I invite you all to put in your opinion and let's see what the audience feels. And I'm going to ask you, Manisha, whether you have a different answer to this.
I think it pretty covers it all. I think awareness, creating awareness
Wait for them
workshop.
to, I'm going to wait for the audience to say, let's see who thinks what.
Okay,
All right.
sure.
So are we getting the poll quickly?
Just waiting for 100% to vote.
Really? Okay, let's see that. All right. Wow. Can you see it, Manisha? Can you see?
Yes,
All right.
yes,
So you
we
see
can.
that. What's your opinion?
Yeah, so all of the above, I kind of agree with it. I would, yeah, I think all of it plays a lot of role.
Mm,
Um, Awareness through workshops is really important. Hands-on experience on site is something that I think everybody can't do. But yeah, workshops are easier to deliver to the general public. And yeah, visual and sensorial digital experience also would be really helpful. So yeah, kind of agree with the both.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you. And okay, please go ahead.
Okay, I just have one more slide to go. So yeah, this was the one leg out of the box approach. My third approach is just go wild approach. So where I do really out of the box things. So during my Orissa visits, I keep seeing these beautiful ikat yarns hung on the walls of my weavers. So I thought, why not do something with these yarns? So we came up with ikat jewelry. So we have a range of ikat jewelry now. So we make tassels out of the yarn and then create jewelry out of it, or make beads out of the yarn.
Mhm,
So we have got really nice reviews on that.
mhm,
Another project that we did was we painted the yarn. We
mhm,
painted the yarn like watercolor when it was stretched, and then we wove it with a single color weft. And this is how we also included dashes on regular interval, the stripes. So yeah, this is how the final product looked like, and we did it for a US customer. So yeah, I really enjoyed working on this project. That's all. Thank
wow.
you.
Thank you, Manisha. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And perhaps we are never going to find complete answers to what ails the craft, but in our small ways, we can all try. My next speaker would be Alex McLean. I'll just quickly give you an introduction, but I think Alex would probably be the right person to talk more, give a little insight into what he does. He's worked with textiles and algorithms. He's an interdisciplinary researcher, software artist, and live coding musician. I mean, really, wow. This is really an amalgamation of so many things, which is difficult for me to at least fathom, but I'm really eager to see what you have for us.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, I'll
Welcome,
try
Alex.
and
Yeah.
oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for your introduction. Also, Manisha, for those insights and for the previous talks. I enjoyed the last session on catch up. Yeah, I'll try and bring all these different topics together. See how well I do. Shall I share my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully you can see that. So yeah, I'm here representing the Penelope project. This project is led by Ellen Harlesius-Gluck in the Deutsches Museum, which is a very large science museum of science and technology in Munich, although I live here in Sheffield, UK. So Penelope is a 5-year research project, and it is supported by the European Research Council. And we're trying to reinsert weaving into the history of science and technology, which might give you, I suppose that's why I'm invited to talk to you now, and I'm very happy to be part of this amazing event. So there's 5 of us, more or less, involved in the project. Ellen leads it. Her background is in mathematics, also philosophy and weaving. Annapurna Mamatapudi is another postdoc like me. She has a mixed background. In fact, we all do. This is a bit of a problem, which is why I put EG, but she's a specialist in science and technology studies, but also has a background in engineering and in textiles and social work and all kinds of things. Giovanni Fanfani is a philologist, so he's rereading ancient texts, looking for connections between weaving and mathematics that way. Dave and I are longtime collaborators as live coders, and Dave Griffiths is with us as part of Foam, an organisation in the UK working with on the boundary of science and art and all kinds of things. I'll talk more about what's going on with these robots here later on, but this is sort of the focus of our project, this technology here, the warp weighted loom.
Alex, you'll have to be a bit louder.
Okay, I'll try and speak up.
Yeah.
I'll just adjust my microphone then. So this is a warp weighted loom. You can see that the warp threads are horizontal, and also you probably can't see, but there is a band around it, which is with a different structure, but it's all integrated into a whole. So this is also what I do, is live coding. I don't have to talk about this too much because Ambika thankfully introduced the idea in the last session. But for those who weren't there, it involves making music. You can see the speakers, but also making music using code. So that's Joanne Armitage. And you can see her screen behind her, like a kind of thought bubble. So you can see the structures behind the music that she's making through the code that she's editing, which generates the music. So some time ago, I coined this word algorave, which I'm very happy has made its way to different parts of India. And I just thought I'd play you a little bit to give you an idea about what goes on. So again, you can see there's the code behind us and people dancing in front of us. It's not usually such a big event. Usually there's only about 50 of us, but in this case, we're at a large festival. But I just want to talk very briefly about the experience of doing this, sort of working with these very discrete linguistic symbols of code, while also producing this live music with people moving in front of you. So it's a very sort of full body experience working with abstract symbols, while also really coding for the body. So what else have I got? Okay, so often when we talk about weaving and coding, this device comes up, the Jacquard machine with the punch cards feeding into the loom. I found this is a real problem actually, because people talk about this as if it was the start of the relationship between computing and weaving. But for me, this is really the end. This is when it becomes automated and we stop engaging with the underlying structures. So I like to kind of leave the Jacquard device aside. I think the real connection between computing and weaving is pattern. So here is a tiling pattern by Annie Albers, who is also a weaver. Yeah. And you can see that there's repetition and symmetry and rotation going on. So this is kind of a nice example of a kind of what I think pattern is. It's something to do with a kind of structure that creates this result, which has very special perceptual properties, which go beyond what you put into them. So kinds of patterns we can talk about are patterns of repetition, of symmetry and interference, this sort of thing. Ways in which you can see them making in the end result, but in unexpected ways. This is the Alhambra with tiling patterns there, Moorish tiling patterns. This is something we've obviously been doing for centuries. This is what I mean by an interference pattern, where you have two quite simple figures often, but once they overlap, you get something new popping out. And this is really the case in weaving too. So this is the houndstooth. And as quite a lay person getting into weaving, I'm always blown away that this is actually made by just black and white warp and weft threads. So 4 black followed by 4 white on both warp and weft. So this should really be striped, but because it has this diagonal twill pattern, I think it is, these two systems interfere to create this very strange houndstooth pattern. So you put these very simple things in and get something very complex out. And that's what's so attractive to pattern making to me. And I think that's also the basis of computing. If you look at what a processor is really doing, deep down, there's a lot of bit shifting and all these sort of pattern operations going on. But then somehow when a computer gets involved, we sort of really shocked by how amazing it is. Somehow once a computer enters the frame, people look at the computer and not, it's hard to really see the long history of computation as it appears in ancient weaving, for example. But then when you actually look at how we deal with patterns, particularly in music with computing, it's actually very simple. So this is like an interface for making patterns in computer music, which is really quite simple if you compare it to something like weaving. So I think computing has a lot to learn from these sort of systems, which I call sort of heritage algorithms. And it shouldn't be that surprising because weaving has developed over thousands of years, and computing as we know it has only developed over, I don't know, 50, 100. Right. So I'll just show another quick video which demonstrates what I mean by a relationship between algorithms and patterns. So here I'm editing an algorithmic pattern to make a visual output. And the system I'm using is called tidal cycles, which I also use to make music, but here I'm just using it to make a visual. Put some blues, maybe make this a little bit more complicated. Okay, there. So how about I make that faster by a factor of 12, but every third repetition reverse it, and maybe superimpose that with itself but shifted a quarter of a step every cycle. That's starting to look interesting. Fill that in, yeah, okay. Maybe I should blend it. Let's see, I'm getting blue on them, yeah, on the brain. Okay, so let's do this and try blending that with maybe some red and purple. Okay, what have I done wrong? Okay. Right. That's quite interesting. So, but how about if I replace that with a sine wave, maybe quite a slow one. Interesting. And maybe superimpose that, but reversed again. Okay. Well, yeah, it's starting to get interesting. So you can see that there's a bit of code being built up here, which directly represents the image that's being made, but they look nothing like each other. This is actually quite simple. Each step is quite simple, but together they interfere to create something really quite unexpected. Later on in the video, I demonstrate making some music with the same thing, but you can look online if you're interested to how Tidal is normally used to make music. So I'm also, as part of the Penelope project, applying this kind of approach to algorithmic pattern to weaving. So this isn't really trying to automate weaving, and it's not trying to even augment weaving, but really trying to expose the kind of thought processes which might go into a traditional craft. So here you can see some weave that's been made on the far right. And that's been made with this thing in the bottom, this live loom, which is using some solenoids to control these heddles to control each individual thread like a jacquard machine might. But these things only move a little bit. They just suggest which thread should be pulled, and then it's actually woven by hand. You pull them back by hand and pass the weft by hand. But which ones go up and down is controlled by this thing here. I hope you can see my cursor. There's a sort of drawdown here, this grid. This is just saying which structures, which threads go up and which go down for each line. It's the third one that's currently active according to this interface. And then right on the left, you see the structure which is generating that grid in a similar way to what I demonstrated in that video. I generated a visual pattern. So starting with an up-down structure and combining it with another one. Every third repetition, it's inverted and then sort of stuck together by a Boolean operation to create this output. And it's interesting that each step of this abstraction looks different. You have the tree structure here of the code, then you have the drawdown, which looks like that, and then the actual visual result is different again, because I'm alternating colors of warp and weft. So you have another interaction going on. It's hard to really get across exactly what's going on, but I hope you can see that weaving itself is complex, and this is trying to bring out that complexity rather than add to it, which I'm not sure how successful it is so far, but that's what I'm working on. And coming back to this system, this is something which we're working together. So Dave has made these robots, which are themselves woven. If you look closely, their bodies are tablet woven. And they walk around following instructions, which he is sending them using a weaving-like device in order to create this maypole dance. I think you have similar dances in India. I know the Tamil Nadu have a very nice ribbon dance. So here we have this sort of chorus of robots going around the maypole, making a braid on it, while I'm also live coding in the background, making music, and my colleague Giovanni is reciting Homeric poetry, which also has its patterns within it and its metrical structure. So we're kind of trying to represent the metrical structure of the poetry and the code that makes the music, which the robots are dancing to. So this is a sort of opportunity to bring all these things together. Of course, the robots, being robots, fall over all the time. So luckily there's always hopefully some kids on hand to put them on the right path. And this is just the original vision behind the project from Ellen. And you can see that we're trying to have interfaces for working with code and then having these robots which work on the warp-weighted loom. This is sort of the vision which drives us. It's not necessarily what we'll end up with, but we'll see. But trying to kind of, I mean, the idea really is that the weaver could just directly weave on the loom, and that's not a problem. What we're trying to do is create a code as an intermediate step so people kind of see the thought processes behind weaving, sort of using code to expose what's going on in the head in the same way as you might see in an algorave. That's sort of our aim. So just to conclude, reflecting on the first session as well, IKAT is clearly an advanced technology, and I certainly have much to learn from it. So I think any engagement between code and weaving should have exchange on both sides. There's lots to learn. And I like the idea of handmade code from Ambika last session. The idea of developing programming into a craft, as we were discussing briefly before the session. I think if IKAT is in trouble, then programming one day will also be in trouble. Maybe not too soon. Well, maybe sooner than we think. Maybe AI and statistical inference will take over programming, and we'll be fighting for programming also being a valuable craft and trying to protect it. And also reflecting on the idea of authenticity, this threat of IKAT being taken over by printing. I think treating weaving as a kind of algorithm and finding ways of sharing that by developing code, it could be a way to promote understanding of IKAT and promote authenticity. I like the idea that craft is an oral science, and it's harder to protect a science when it's not written down. So maybe looking for ways of keeping that ephemeral knowledge, protecting that, but also finding ways of sharing that in kind of ephemeral code, if that makes sense. But I'd be, yeah, very interested to continue that kind of discussion. These are just half thoughts, so very interested to hear what you have in response. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. So I'm going to ask you a question since we don't have a poll question for you. I'm very impressed by the intricacies of weaving that you're aware of, to be able to understand how weaving takes place. You really have, I do think when I look at your work, you do seem to have a very good understanding of the technicalities of weaving. Before this webinar, I think when we were talking, you had mentioned that because you learned the technicalities of weaving, you became a better programmer. I want to understand from you, would you say that for everybody? And how did it help you to become a better programmer in this sense?
I suppose quite a few senses, really. So Ellen was very keen that Dave and I, well, Dave also already knew weaving, learnt from his mother, but Ellen was very keen that we did weaving as part of the project, so we actually got hands-on with it, sort of gain that embodied knowledge. And it's that kind of embodied knowledge which I think is missing from coding. We kind of see it as something which has come about in the last 50 years. It's not culturally embedded. It doesn't have that history of practice. I suppose it's starting to be passed down from generation to generation, but it's still early days in thinking of it as something which has cultural resonance. So just seeing how similar it is in some ways, it's very different in others, but how similar it is in some ways to textiles, it helps me think about programming in, I suppose, a more culturally rounded way. But particularly with my interest in generating music from algorithms, it allows me to see how patterns, a richer idea of what a pattern is from textiles. I think in computer music, we just see patterns as very simple one-dimensional sequences, or maybe, one-dimensional, I suppose, over time. But when you look at something like weaving, there's all these interference patterns, all these symmetries and things at multiple scales, and that's really, really inspiring as a musician, I think. Good question.
Okay,
thank
great.
you.
Thank you. But we'll have more later for you. In the meantime, let me invite the third speaker, third presenter, Komal. Let's see you. And Komal's going to talk about the progress of various projects, sub-projects within Digikat. Okay, let me give you a better introduction, Komal. Komal is, she is graduated as an exhibition designer from NID, has worked and is a spatial and experience designer based in Bangalore. So go ahead, Komal.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Manisha and Alex, for the lovely presentation. Continuing from what Nian has spoken or introduced me as, so I'm interested in learning spaces and play. And today I will be representing the Digikat team, sharing all the wonderful projects that everybody's been working on. This is the process Miro board. In case anyone is interested in to know more, please visit it. The link of the board will be added to the chat. Stay tuned for that, and please add your comments and questions there. We would love to hear from you and any feedback or ideas. And yes, now starting with the updates. IKAT is a project between Praveen, Ajitesh, and Yatharth. What they are working on is they're trying to bring forward the uniqueness of IKAT and Maker and the processes, which whoever is using the IKAT product recognizes where, how, and why the IKAT fabric or the product came from. These are sample visuals, explorations by the team. In terms of the uniqueness of each uniqueness of ikat pattern, they are exploring the location of the craftsperson, they're exploring the process, the production duration, the cost, etc. Moving on to the next theme, ikat generator is a project by Salil and Melin. What they are doing is they're creating a tool which allows individuals to generate their own ikat patterns and bring out unique elements of the unique elements of the little motifs that exist in ikat. This is a sample GIF. And these are some of the final detailed explorations that they have made. The third one is Making of Ikat by Melin and Samarth. Yes, Melin is working on 2 projects, which is great. This is an interactive walkthrough which will let the viewer or the audience experience the process of ikat digitally to understand this tedious and excited design and production of ikat and appreciate ikat from any part of the world that you are in. And here are some of the explorations. To the left, you would see how increase in the number of threads leads to more detailed patterns and leading to more work, more effort. And to the right, you see the tying of thread, which is done before dyeing, is showcased through swiping the finger left and right on the screen. Concept 4, cost calculator by Hugo and Nien. What Hugo and Nien are working on is they're visualizing the process of creating ikat patterns and developing a tool that helps anyone come up with a cost for that pattern. So the elements that can be a part of this, here's a GIF for representation, would be the size of motifs, the quantity of motifs, the colors, etc. And what they aim to achieve. Concept 5, IKAT and DataViz. This is it's a collaboration between Mike, Natasha, and me. We are documenting and tracing stories of the craft community across India and bringing them out in the form of data visualizations done through IKAT. And the second stage of it hopefully would be to provide a tool to IKAT crafts people who could create their own data visualizations and convert them into ikat fabric. To the left, what you see is the earnings of ikat weavers in the rural and not ikat, the handloom weavers in rural and urban India, and each little rhombus represents 2,500 people. So, and to the right, Natasha has documented her emotions throughout the day and throughout the week for a month and ranging across 24 hours. Yes, so those were the updates. Please send us your questions, thoughts, and feedback. And a big thank you to Hasgeek, to Nanditi and, one second, sorry, yeah. To Nanditi and Ambika from Ajaibghar, Nien and Hugo for organizing this wonderful hackathon, makeathon.
Okay, thank you, Komal. And let me invite all the audience to ask us questions. Oh, there is a poll question for you, Komal. Well, this is as part of the Digikat. Komal, you will probably have to take it on and perhaps give an opinion. So the audience might like to suggest what the project Digikat should be. Develop further for tangible outcome. Should we seek finance for development? Involve craftspeople, weavers in the development, or leave it at this stage? I think we'll be very happy to know what people think. So the movements are getting a little more tensed. We don't know what people want us to do. Let's see what the audience is saying. And we have some questions for the speakers. We'd like to take that on as soon as we finish with the poll. All right. Wow.
Interesting.
What do you say? Komal, would you like to comment on that?
I'm glad that there is 0% for leave it at this stage. That's my first comment. Develop further for tangible outcomes, seek finance. So I definitely agree with involving more craftspeople and weavers in the development, because IKAT is something that comes from them, and we are developing. I mean, most like, the concepts are from them and for them, right? So in a sense that they become aware of what we are doing, how we are looking at IKAT would also give them a new perspective. So that means I'm really happy that a majority of the people have voted for that.
Mm-hmm.
Seek finance for development. Yeah, in terms of, I'll just leave it at that. I think I have some thoughts. I might need to gather
Right.
that.
I think it is
Second
really
point,
at an early
yeah.
stage. So
Yeah.
perhaps a lot more needs to be done before it could be carried forward. But in the meantime, let me put forward the questions to our panelists. There's a question from Ridula for Manisha. Do you use natural dyes or chemical ones? If you're using natural dyes, how does it impact the costing? Also, is your thread, is the yarn that you use pure cotton or mercerized? Well,
So
it
I
could
just
be.
answered the questions. So the answer to the first one is no, we don't use natural dyes. We use VAT dyes, which are azo-free. Natural dyes hasn't been successful in our cluster, because the weavers have problem. It doesn't. They say that it doesn't penetrate in the yarns. So yeah, that has been the problem. So we haven't been able to use natural dyes. Second question is mercerized. We use mercerized yarn, which is also pure cotton. Mercerization is just a process to make the yarn stronger, shinier, and helps in dye absorption. So that is also pure cotton. I have tried single thread in the past, but it breaks. So the weavers haven't been willing to use singles yarn. Singles yarn gives a very good texture, but yeah, unfortunately, not now. We are not using it.
Thank you, Manisha. I hope, Ridula, you found the answers. There's a question from Shravan for Alex. How might you ensure such interdisciplinary interventions have a greater impact at the grassroots level and equitable future for craft person? Do you see that?
Yeah, I think that's quite a difficult question for me to answer.
Mm-hmm.
As a technologist. I suppose my only real answer is to collaborate people who are expert at working at the grassroots. I think, yeah, that's the power of interdisciplinary work. And in our case, Annapurna, it takes that on in the group and is looking for ways for which impacts from our work can help people at the grassroots. Especially in India. So yeah, I guess that's my I can't really give it's not really something I'm specialized in.
Well, perhaps I just want to add on a bit. All of us who are on this platform experimenting with extreme techniques or technology, one can say, really don't have an output in mind or an outcome in terms of usefulness, because these collaborations between two extremes are even difficult to imagine where they will lead to. But we do believe one thing, that putting them together, experimenting with them, definitely leads to new concepts coming out of that. Many of us are trying to do that, and you can already see, perhaps with the kind of work shown by Alex, kind of pitches that we are working on in Digikat. Some of them are rather practical because we perhaps know what the market, or we have experience in that. But a lot of young people are trying to integrate, I think, very varied thoughts to help us expand beyond the box. And perhaps that's where some new things will emerge. And that's where I would like to encourage the youngsters coming from all fields to really try a hand at, if you know an extreme product or an extreme technique, which is very different from yours, I don't think you should be afraid to pick it up and see what can be done about it. I know this is a little preachy, but I feel that.
I guess I'd also add, as a researcher, that it's important to make
Yes.
your research available through open publishing and free open source publishing of code. If you want your work to be used, then you need to make it available. And I think there's good ways of doing that.
Okay. Let me just put more, there are many questions. I'm just trying to figure out which one I should go ahead with. So a question for Manisha: how do you see Digikat projects being involved with brands like Neeli Titli or other similar studios?
So I'm yet to understand the project in an in-depth way, but I'm sure I'm open-minded about it. What is interesting to me is bringing out awareness about IKAT. I think I saw in the Miro board one of the projects where coding was used to simulate IKAT, how IKAT was made. And it was like a game. So if you have something like that and the customers are using it, they understand what goes into making IKAT. So it kind of increases the value of IKAT. So things like that, I think the cost calculator might also help. So yeah, these things are interesting for me.
Thank you, Manisha. There was no pressure to answer, really, especially for the Digikat projects. Okay, another question for Alex. The idea of recording oral knowledge in form of algorithms. Kashmir has Talim, a method of singing patterns for carpets. Any way to connect coding and song composition that determines sequence of weaving specific colors? It's a very long question. So so Jatin is informing about the oral knowledge and of weaving the pattern through oral communication, and that's called Talim. That's done in carpet weaving in Kashmir. Is there any way to connect coding and song composition that determines sequence of weaving?
Yeah, I really love this kind of practice. It's and I suppose there's similar things I'm aware of in the UK as well, with work song, ways of synchronizing people working together using music. Yeah, I find this very beautiful. And I suppose it's already a practice that's being done, and I think it's definitely something I'd like to explore more as a sort of computer musician, how to collaborate more with people on sort of bridging the gap between textiles and music, because I think there is a sort of very nice shared ideas of patterns that we can share. And yeah, all these things are nice ways of bringing different kinds of people together and sort of developing a shared language. So yes, it's definitely an interest of mine too.
Yes, so some more new thoughts happening. Okay, so I'm going to take on 2 more questions, I think, because we have been going a bit beyond. Would the craftsman, this is for Manisha, would the craftsman working with Neeli Titli like to pilot such experiments with simple technologies like WhatsApp or smartphones? Do they use it?
I don't quite understand the question. So coding through WhatsApp and smartphones, is that?
So
what
probably, I'm sure they use WhatsApp and smartphones.
Yeah, they do,
They
of
do.
course.
So perhaps the coding. What about your opinion on them getting involved with, let's say, the Digikat project? Do you think they would take on such experimental work, because it would mean investing their time, efforts, perhaps with not so much clarity of an output?
I don't know. That's a question we have to like think over.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure. But yeah, if they see benefits, if we can show them the benefits of the process, so this should not take away from their expertise or employment or anything. If it adds up to the earning, it adds up to their speed, if it is beneficial, I mean, yeah, we can definitely take it up.
All right. So continuing with that question, how would using algorithm generate designs affect the cost or feasibility of getting the IKAT produced? So let's say, through this experimentation, there are patterns are generated. Do you think that it would impact the cost and perhaps the feasibility of actually getting it woven?
So I am not very clear how coding will create patterns that Photoshop cannot. So if I can understand that, because Photoshop is already creating patterns, and I mean, I don't use it as much because I don't like repetitive patterns a lot. But yeah, Photoshop has been doing that. So I think Alex might be able to. How would coding be different from Photoshop?
I suppose with Photoshop, that sort of treats weaving as a 2-dimensional surface. And so it's a bit like treating IKAT as something that can be printed. It doesn't really consider the structure of a weave. So I think coding can help us represent the threads themselves in the code and how they interact, and get deeper into exploring patterns through creative constraints. I think of IKAT as being a really interesting creative constraint in the patterns it produces, and also let us think more about emergent properties, like how shiny or how the fabric drapes and this kind of thing looks for relationships between structural patterns and the actual properties of the fabric. Yeah, I think it comes back to why I like to put the jacquard machine aside, because I think that leads to this sort of 2-dimensional thinking. You have these 2-dimensional punch cards going into machine and then this fabric coming out, which we then think of being 2-dimensional, but really it's 3-dimensional. As Naeem was saying, you also have double weave where you actually end up with 2 fabrics that might interweave with each other in different ways. So yeah, I think Photoshop is a great way to explore. It has beautiful tools, but I think it doesn't fit well to really thinking about the structure of the weave itself.
Mhm. Well, I think these are still questions which will require a lot more working upon. I hope, Andrew, you have managed to understand a bit of what our speakers are, they too they need to reflect on questions which are very difficult for us to answer too at this point. However, there's a question for Alex from Bahrain. Is electronic music the only palette in which you explore coding? How about other genre?
Oh, yes, I really enjoy working with jazz improvisers, vocalists, all sorts. I suppose I come from this sort of electronic dance music background, but and so Tidal Cycles is a free open source project, and people have used it for all kinds of music. And in fact, one of the main inspirations for Tidal Cycles, which I think makes it a bit different from other systems, is that it is inspired by Indian classical music. There's a French-Indian researcher called Bernard Bell who made something called the Bowl processor for notating tabla music. And he turned that into a generative system for creating computer music. It was really amazing. And so the way that Tidal notates rhythm is really taken from this system. So indirectly it comes from tabla rhythms. So the way that the meter is described in these cyclic ways. So the cycles in Tidal Cycles relates to this sort of cyclic approach to music, which is a bit absent from sort of Western classical music. And yeah, people use it to make noise or to control pianos or all kinds. So it does have a certain approach to music, this sort of cyclic approach, but yeah, you can use it for any genre that you'd like to make, I think.
So there you are, Biren. I hope you are going to now probably move into perhaps applying such thing in other genres.
Yeah.
Okay, a final question for the Digikat team. So Komal, perhaps you can answer this. Is Digikat planning to inform or get the crafts community about what they have been doing? Well,
It's
Avrati.
Avrati. Hi Avrati. She's actually my friend. So Avrati, it's two ways. In fact, it's not just about largely it is to introduce young people who code to these traditional practices and look at intersections between both of them, right? So people who have been a part of the Digikat Makeathon, in fact, if this project does go forward, sharing these projects to the weavers and crafts people would give an interesting perspective, which we haven't explored yet. But this hasn't been the main intent. It could become an intent in the future.
Certainly. And I do think the intent is right. However, it's too early to say how we can involve them. But there have been certainly opinions by coders, designers, all involved in this project to take it ultimately to the people to whom it belongs. So I'd like to end this today and thank everyone over here, all our speakers, Manisha, Alex, Komal, for sharing a lot of information, a lot of excitement, a lot of innovation. Thank you so much for today's webinar. And we hope to see you. So there are still many more questions, but we promise to get back to the questions later on. And if we need to get in touch with any one of you, they have promised to answer certain questions. So we'll be getting back to you to the questions which we could not take up this time. Thank you very much and good night.